Hello, everybody. So my name is Christian Stark. I'm a product manager for Advanced Cluster Management based in EMEA. And today we talk about automated policy-based governance using Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management and Ansible-Tower. I'm happy that Gus Parvin, our principal software engineer, is joining us today for the demo. Next slide, please.
Hello.
So let's start with some basic introduction, setting some context. So we have here the challenge regarding security, compliance, and governance in the cloud. And enterprises, we have the task to meet internal enterprise security standards and external regulatory compliance requirements. Their environments, they are quite complex. They can be in the cloud with different providers as well as on-premise, and those environments are quite dynamic. And another thing I would like to highlight is that our solutions, they should be open. They should not be proprietary solutions. Next slide, please. So basically, if we talk about ACM, policy-based governance, we want to achieve that policy management is happening in the cloud. So policy engines like Gatekeeper or OPA, they are designed to work only on a single cluster, but with our feature like placement rules, it is quite easy to distribute them over a bunch of clusters and to change this certainly. Also, we have an integrated view with cluster application and observability. And as mentioned before, our task, our goal is to be extensible so that we can integrate with other providers. So we have so-called policy enforcement points, for example, with the compliance operator, also with other vendors like Sysdig and using FICO. And we are supporting 100 different policy engines like Gatekeeper, Kubernetes. And what I also want to highlight quickly is our policy collection repository. Gus will give more details later. Here we have different kind of policies, which are for different categories like security, resiliency, and software engineering. And here we are happy if you would like to contribute, but we will take a look later. Another thing I would like to highlight is that GitOps is one of our preferred methods to deploy these policies to your fleet of clusters. Next slide, please. Let's get a little bit more into detail of our governance architecture. So you see on the bottom how to apply the policies. So they can be applied via CLI or via GitHub, as mentioned, which is our preferred way. They will be applied via subscriptions. You have a dashboard where you can view all the policies, where you get a quick overview about the state of the policies. So we have some features which we are planning, like a scheduled policy, which behaves like a job. We have policy sets which are designed to group the policies like you prefer. We have a policy generator, which makes it easier to generate policies from different Kubernetes objects or from source code. And here you see also the Ansible integration already. So where you can assign Ansible playbooks and Ansible jobs to policies, as we will show you later. In the future, we will also integrate via observability stack with others, with incident management systems or with quality assurance systems, as you see on the very right. And on the left, you see that the policies are getting propagated to the managed clusters. And here are the mentioned policy enforcement points. So for example, you see the Gatekeeper OPA enforcement point, which Gus will show you later, the example. We have also different policy controllers, for example, the config management controller, where we have now also the feature of templatizing policies. And we have, for example, the cert management controller, which Gus will also show later as an example. So here you see how to consume the policies. And on the left, you see that we want to be compliant against different standards, which getting defined by quality assurance teams or by your security department. Next slide, please, Gus. Here you see basically how we are integrating with Ansible-Tower. So we have different pillars in ACM. So one of them is cluster lifecycle management. So here you can call Ansible automation platform during lifecycle events, for example, during creating clusters, during upgrading clusters. With a policy-based management, which is topic today, as you see, so that you have policies which are not compliant, which can invoke Ansible-Jobs. And we have also application lifecycle management, where you can deploy applications and invoke Ansible-Jobs either as a pre or a post hook. So this is the context today. You see that Ansible automation platform will generate jobs on the hub cluster, so on the managing cluster, and those jobs will invoke, as you can imagine, Ansible-Tower. And you see on the right that there are different kinds of use cases. So you can also configure, for example, the network. You can create ServiceNow tickets, as we will show you later. So there are different kinds of use cases, and we are happy for discussing with you the use cases, and maybe we can find new use cases together. Next slide, please. Okay, here you see again the ACM and the Ansible integration with policy-based governance. So you have here a management hub. As mentioned, here on this hub, the automation is really taking place, where we are generating Ansible jobs and where we are invoking the Red Hat Ansible automation platform. And you can do this automation for every managed cluster, basically, but as highlighted, this automation will take place on the management hub. Next slide, please. So,
thank you, Christian.
And I will pass to Gus.
Excellent. So we're going to switch over to a demo now. Christian has already mentioned that we have a policy collection community, but we want to continue to remind you that we do have that community, and we will show it quickly later. For the demo today, we first want to call out here our ACM Web Console, which is where we will mostly be focused. Right now, I'm on the governance tab of the ACM Web Console, looking at a list of policies that have been applied. There's something new here in ACM 2.3. The automation column is new. So what we're going to do now is define some automation for some of our policies. The first policy we're going to define automation for is a certificate policy. This policy is currently non-compliant because it has detected a certificate that is expiring. To configure automation, we'll select the Configure button. And in the dialog, we now need to fill out some details about what the automation will do. The first thing is we have to select a credential. I've already defined the credential, and in a moment, we will talk a little more about credentials. The next thing that happens is using the credential, Ansible-Tower is contacted and a list of the job templates is built. So now I need to select the job template I'm interested in running when this policy is non-compliant. So you see here I have several to choose from. I'm going to select the ACM policy compliance template. The next thing that I need to fill out is some extra variables. So wait one moment, and I'm going to switch over and select some extra variables that I've already pre-populated here. Now these variables are settings that are unique to your particular job template. And these are the ones that are specific to mine.
So these variables can also be left empty, right, Gus? So it depends really on your use case.
That's right. You don't have to provide any. It all depends on your particular playbook that you're running, whether it can handle, what extra variables that it needs to run. So the next thing I do is I select a scheduling option, and I'm going to pick Run Once mode, and I'll come back and talk a little more about the Run Once mode, the credential, and the credentials in a moment. So I just saved that, and you see in the automation column now it's been updated. We're going to do one more here. We're going to do the first policy. It's the Gatekeeper Container Resource Request. So I'm going to configure automation for it and go through the same procedure. in this case, I'm going to pick a different job template. I'm going to pick a ServiceNow ticket job template. And this job template requires some different variables. So let me switch over and select the right template here, and I think I've gotten my procedures switched, but that's okay. This one is the one I intended to use for the certificate expiration, so that's why it says that. But that's okay. We still want to select the run once mode. We'll do that again. After selecting save, you see it updated here. So now we have automation configured for 2 of our policies. That automation has now been triggered. So for a moment here, if I open back one of these windows and I click on history, I see that the job has been successfully run. So why did it run? Let's talk about the schedule automation modes for a moment. There's manual, run once, and disable. Manual run means when I select manual run and save, the automation will run at that time. When I select run once mode and save, the automation is going to run as soon as the policy is non-compliant. In my case, I picked a policy that was already non-compliant, which means it ran immediately. Mm-hmm. Disable automation means no automation will be run. It's configured, but no automation is going to run. So you will have to go back in later and either select manual run or run once mode.
Mm-hmm. The important question, Gus, what happens if you have, for example, 2 clusters and the first cluster is not getting non-compliant? The policy will run and it will be disabled. So how can you achieve that it will also detect whether a second cluster will not be compliant?
That's a great question. So to be very clear here, we have the concept of these policies, and what we're looking at on the screen is what we call our root level policies. So these policies are all defined by the user. When you distribute a policy to your clusters, then you have what we would call our cluster level policies. And the states at the cluster level are not considered when looking at the compliance and deciding when to run, but only the root level. So if you have different managed clusters becoming compliant and non-compliant and changing, we're not considering that compliance level, but the highest compliance level at the root policy. So when it transitions here from compliant to non-compliant, or if it's already non-compliant, that's when we'll run to automation. If it's non-compliant, and while non-compliant, additional clusters make it more non-compliant, there's no additional automation that runs in that scenario. The other important thing to remember here is run once mode really means run once mode. So once it runs once, it will go to the disabled state. If you want to run on a continual basis, our automation is it's a new CRD. So we have a new custom resource called policy automation, and that policy automation resource controls the current setting. If you put that policy automation resource in your GitOps, then when we resync with the GitOps, that same state will be resynced. So you can continually reconfigure yourself into the run once mode if you desire the continuous scheduled rerunning of your automation. Okay, so did you have another question, Christian?
No, thank you.
Okay. Next up, we'll take a look at the credentials very quickly. The credentials is one place where you can go to easily set up your connections to your Ansible-Tower environments. So you could click on Add Credentials, and you have lots of choices here, but the Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform is what you need to select. And then you have the opportunity to give it a name and a namespace, and you specify the Ansible-Tower host and a token. So that is something I previously did. It's one of the prereqs. The Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform is another prereq. If I switch over to this next tab and we take a look at my installed operators, you see the second one in the list is the Ansible Automation Platform Resource Operator. Install that operator before you set up your automation. If you don't, we'll display a reminder that that's a requirement. So next, let's take a look and see what happened. So in the automation, a couple different things happened. One, we sent something to ServiceNow. If we refresh ServiceNow, I do have a new ticket here. I can click on the ticket and take a look and see that some details specific to those extra arguments, the extra variables that were provided to the playbook are here, telling me, the namespace and the policy, and even a link here that I provided in the variables to help me go and take a look at the particular ACM Hub set of policies where this violation came from. So one of the policies created this ServiceNow ticket. The other one sent a Slack notification. So here's the other one, similar set of details from the extra variables with the policy name and a couple links, and it also has the list of clusters that are non-compliant, which in my case is just the one local cluster. Okay, so next we will take a quick look at the community. So in this tab, we have our policy collection community. It is simply under the Open Cluster Management Organization. And one of the valuable things to take a look at here is under blogs, we will have a blog that goes through the details that we're describing today. So it's going to go through the creation of setting up automation for a certificate policy, and how to create a ServiceNow ticket, just like we were showing, but in a lot more details on how to set up the playbook and a sample playbook, and it'll go into a lot more details. Also, in addition to blogs that are really useful for learning more about governance, risk, and compliance in ACM, there's a lot of donated policies under the community and stable folders.
Yeah. And with automation, Gus, it can be really applied to any kind of policy, no? So it does not need to be a gatekeeper policy or a certificate policy. It can be any policy, right?
That's absolutely right. So, Christian, you absolutely got it right. You do have to set up your automation for each policy, but you can configure, this next policy I create, I could set it up for or run the same automation. So I don't have to run different automation. I can run the same one, but the important thing to remember is you do need to set it up for each policy that you want to have automation run for.
Thanks a lot, Gus. So this was really a fantastic demo, and I just want to highlight that we have also an Ansible integration with the other pillars which we discussed at the beginning, so with cluster lifecycle, with application lifecycle management, and we have also a different session which you can review where we're going to deeper into this. So thanks again, Gus, for this fantastic presentation.
No problem. Thank you, Christian, for coming and sharing these great details with us today.